All right, we're back again. 387. Bottom end is officially done. Now, time for top end. Head studs, heads, cam's already in. Lifters, push rods, rocker arms. What kind of clearances you got? Because, you know? Go ahead, look on the internet. There's about this much information on it. Everybody, when you ask about a cam, says, look at your piston to valve. Well, in order to do that, you got to have a camshaft already in your block. Well, we already went across and way back in that first video what cam we used, SUM-8900, Summit brand cam, good mid-range cam, really fun in this motor combination. So we have our lifters over here soaking in some synthetic dinosaurs today. That's what I have on the shelf. I'm not going to go buy some new just to soak some lifters down. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started on head studs. As you know, we bought some ARPs. Only reason I went with head studs versus head bolts was because, well, here we are again, doing it again. And, well, we're going to be running some nitrous through this block, so the stronger it is, the better it is. I've already got some assembly lube on these guys for the threads, ARP flavor. And the biggest thing to remember when you're doing head studs is hand tight into the block. You don't want to go cranking on them. Just hand tight, good to go. But we still got to clean the head gasket surface. We also got to check piston to valve clearance and such. So we're going to do a DIY solid lifter to check piston to valve clearance for you guys. That way you guys can see where my cam is. Maybe you get a bigger one, maybe a smaller one, up to you. Let's go ahead and get started. So, you can use whatever you want on your bolts. I'm going to go ahead, since I'm using ARP, I'm going to use ARP Ultra Torque fastener assembly lubricant to precisely replicate all ARP fastener clamp load specifications. There's a lot in this. Just gonna go put these guys in. We'll probably go through a time lapse. You don't want to see me just screwing my block. So if you want to chase your threads, you can go buy the however much it is thread chaser. You can take your old head bolt, put a little cut in there, take it to your wire wheel, clean out the threads, and 5 minutes of work, you just made yourself a DIY thread chaser. You guys hear some things going on in the background. I got some buddies over here working on another Fox Fighting Mustang. We like helping people, so if you need some help, maybe there's something you want to do to your car that how do I do it? Comment. Wife, she'll read them. Or she'll yell at me to read them. It'll get read. And maybe we'll make a video about it. Especially 4i stuff. There's not a lot out there for 4i. So maybe we can fix on that. DIY thread chaser took me like 2 minutes to make. Working great. Some basic head studs in. We still got to clean our head surface. We still got to check piston the valve. We still got to put lifters in. But first, we're going to bring you on over and we're going to do a little DIY. We made that thread chaser tool. We're going to make a solid lifter because you don't want to go checking your piston to valve clearance and have that lifter just squishing away. So we're going to bring you on in here and show you why I tore one apart. So we're just going to pop this little guy out. Probably going to shoot it across the barn. Stab somebody in the eye. Hopefully not the person.
Hit your phone, not me, so.
We're gonna go get another lifter and not lose that. Alright, so we're gonna take this guy apart. This time we're really not going to fling this guy all the way across the barn. Normally they don't do that. And by normally, I mean the last twice I did it. Ha! There we go. I'm going to take that guy out. Hope the car gods favor us today.
Pop this guy out of here. And there's our spring. And we're going to take this guy right here off. Strategically and with medical skill. Yep. There we go. Then we're going to flip this guy around because she was like this. And we're going to put it in there like this. Shove our spring down in there. This guy will go right here on top. And then you just got to force that spring back in. Which we're going to go borrow on the engine because why not? So we're going to get this guy lined up in here. See how that's not going any more in there? We have now made a solid lifter. Once we pop this spring in here, if my hands learn to cooperate, there's two. Now, that is a solid roller lifter, along with your second solid roller lifter we made. You can now check your piston to valve. Well, I'll probably use that one because this one's got a little bit of play. Now you can check your piston to valve.
All right, now I'm not telling you you have to upgrade your head gas and stuff, but what I like to do when I buy them is I like to buy the Felpro ones with the blue here. I tell you, when you're doing heads off for something, this guy comes right off. Those composite graphite cheapo guys you can get, you're gonna be scraping your heads and your block for a while. This is actually off my 306. It's a 40 thousandths quench, so that way it gives you guys a heads up when we do our piston to valve clearance of what a traditional gasket thickness would be for your piston to valve. I think our next step here though, we're gonna go ahead and get the deck bridge out. We're gonna measure just how far these pistons are coming to the edge of the hole here. They're up there. So, you know, budget builds. I'm borrowing this. This is borrowed from my buddy Britton. He's got his own YouTube channel, BritDog15, I believe. Go check him out. He's got some Fox bodies too. Turbo. 351 Windsor. In case you don't want to go to 387 or maybe you turbo your 387. I'd like to see that. You know, we're getting a little spray bottle. Nitrous.
You want to make sure we have a clean head surface. You don't want to have debris underneath your gauge, giving you improper readings. You know, look at all that. Just give her a nice little wipe down. Clean is good.
Wipe down on your deck bridge too. All right, so we're going to set our initial depth here.
You want it just to, you want it to touch the block. And the block will now become 0. For any other measurements we do, the block is 0. So, you know, come over here. Holy smokes, she's way down there.
That's not really where she's going to be. When we bring the piston around, oh, you see that? Oh, did you see that? I saw that. Huh? Watch that little gauge right there. So see how it went up and then it came back down? Up and back down. That is actually how far out of the hole we are coming. Look at that. Whew. She comes out there a little bit. So something to keep in mind when you're doing this motor. You want to check this. See, I went ahead and upgraded to a 51 thou quench head gasket because I wanted to keep a nice 40 between my pistons and my head. Because that's kind of like them pistons to valve marriage. Very ugly divorce. We don't want to see that. So that's something you want to keep check on. Also, if you do use the Fox body pistons, you'll come over here and see this. See, there's a flat part here. Then there's this little big tiny dish. Don't measure the dish. That'll mess your measurements all the way up. So we're measuring back here on here. Now you want to measure the top, the bottom, the middle, and make sure it doesn't rock any. If you have a lot of piston rock, you want to take and do an average of all your measurements. That way, you're not just assuming that, hey, I'm good in one spot, and you find out maybe you're a little higher on the back or lower on the back. That is also going to help you calculate your compression.
The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take that back down.
I'm going to take that head gasket I stole off from my 306. Thanks, Red Car. See, we know this head gasket is at 40 thousandths quench. So this would be your traditional small block Ford head gasket. So that's just going to be a template for now. We're not really using this head gasket. So next we're going to take you over to my set of AFR 185 off-the-shelf cylinder heads. They run great. I love them. They got the 202 valve, 1.6 valve, up to like 600 valve lift. Perfect budget head, and it lets her breathe. So we're going to take a minute here, and I'm going to pop some valves out so we can put the inner spring in to do some piston to valve checking. Give me a minute. One of the most important parts about this build is your piston to valve clearance, because you're probably using, you know, factory Fox body piston, 351 connecting rod with the football rods, and your 3.85 Summit Eagle crank. If you went ahead and did what I did and you tried to buy the cheapest, biggest head you could buy, you probably ended up with an AFR 185. Great, out of the box budget head. So, like the last 40 minutes, I've been fighting with the valve spring compressor here. What we did is took out the we took out the big spring, left just the inner spring, because that little checker spring, well, that's more money that we're just, little spring will do perfect. Went to Summit, picked up the Trick Flow Specialties. That guy right there. Give you a second for that guy right there to write it down. Got it? And I was talking to a fella up there, and he told me to get this one. Thank God he did, because we had to take it all the way out. Yep. Goes from 6.8 to 7.8. And here, find out, I run 7.8. Thank goodness didn't get a shorter one. This guy's going to go in here, and as you're adjusting your, spinning around, adjusting your valves, you can bring this guy out to see which length you need. We have clay on our pistons, head gasket on, and we're going to pop on the head. But first, I'm going to bring it down here and just remind you guys about the fly cutting of the pistons. So this is a X303 Ford racing head. It has the 1.94 intake valve, and our AFRs have the big old 2.02. That's a big one. So this guy, I do not think will fit the factory clearances of the pistons. They might. I can't remember for sure. I know they fit my 306, but it had 30 over pistons, so I can't be 100% sure. Actually, you know what, now that I think about it, this head was originally on my wife's blown up 302, so it does fit. But always check the piston to valve clearance. This guy here, being the big guy, he's going to hit up here. So if you look at, take a look at how small these guys are here. They're all the same size. I'm going to take a peek on down in the engine here. I'll post some pictures up right here. We fly cut right here and here to make room for those big 202 valves. I've already got some clay set up down over here. We're going to throw the head on, throw my push rods in, and we're going to spin on this over and over and over. That way you guys and I can check my piston to valve clearance here. And now you guys know how to do it too. Reason 33 on why I like head studs. Because if that wasn't satisfying, yeah, you liked it. Like I said, I've already checked my push rods, so I already know what they were going to be. And as I explained in the other video, we got some Trick Flow 1.6 roller rockers. Cheapest ones I could find. I actually found them new in box on sale. Used from a guy I bought it for his project, found out that, hey, they're not going to work for my project. So let's bring the rotating assembly down to base circle on the cam. See how we're all the way down there? We're on the base circle. Nice and good there. Then we're going to put our poly locks on here. Set it to 0 lash. That way we're not worried about anything happening here. Minimize on the play. Alright, now we got everything down, 0 lash. Inner springs on, solid lifters, push rods. Some head bolts here and just some down here to hold it down. We're going to go ahead and spin on the motor. I'm going to take it around 1 or 2 whole times. Remember, take it easy. You're going to be pushing into clay. Maybe we'll get lucky and we won't even touch. Oh, here we go. This one's opening right now. So it's going to be pushing down as the piston's coming up. This is going to be opening as well. No hitting, so we're getting
making some progress there. Oh, now we're opening up on the intake side. Let's just go around one more time just to make sure we have a nice imprint on the heads. All right. Now we'll go ahead and undo everything you just did. Now we got everything taken back apart. We're gonna pull off our head and hey, remember the last video when we were crossing our fingers and knocking on wood? Maybe we can do that again. Well, this is unexpected. So here is our intake side. He goes down in there. This is our exhaust side. Didn't expect to do that, but here's the gist. We're gonna go cut this, and that's gonna tell you how much you have between your valve and your cutout. Be right back. Exhaust side. As you can see, we have plenty of meat before we are trying to make a mirage. So we're good on the exhaust. Let me go cut the intake in half real quick. Here's our sliced version of our intake valve side. I think we can run a lot more cam if we want to. I mean, there's miles there. So we are 100% okay with rerunning our AFR heads on our engine block and have fine clearance. You know, maybe over winter time, get rid of the 1.6 rockers and up that to that 1.7 ratio we talked about back in the parts video. Stay tuned. That's the wife will let me spend some money. All right, now let's get ready to put in our lifters, our spider, and our cylinder heads. Here we go. All right, so we've had our lifters sitting in some liquid dinosaur, synthetic version. That's just what I had over there. Go ahead and drain out all the extra oil. Not really worried about spilling in the motor. That'll actually help on us later. But you basically just want to make sure you get most of the bubbles out of your hydraulic lifters. Like I said, you know, they're not big budget lifters or nothing. They're just what were used out of the other car. They looked like they were replaced. Probably, I don't know, probably generic lifters. I know a lot of lifters look just like it, but contrary to popular belief, it does not matter which way your oiler hole goes, because the way the oil runs in, it goes all the way around your lifter and through. It doesn't come in front or back, so you don't have to worry about that. Remember, if you're using roller lifters, make sure you have a roller block or modified for a roller block. Your dog bone will hold your lifter straight, so you don't go to the left or the right and each up the cam. So we're just going to throw these on and we'll just do a little time lapse while I throw the rest of these in. Like I said, you don't want to forget on your dog bones. These guys will go on next. And there's your lifters. And see, dog bones in here. These fellers ain't going to turn. And wipe your cam. All right, that feller's back in there. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, like I said, I'm sure somewhere in your town has an old-timey mechanic. He's probably got a valve spring compressor tool. Most of them are willing to help people out, so look around. Some people say do it, some people say don't. You always give it a little. We're not giving Elon Musk a new satellite, so we must be doing something right here. I'm going to go ahead and jump in and do the other one real quick. I'll be back with you in a little bit. Got a little helper here. Say hi, Addy. I'm going to go ahead and put our spider down in here. Torque specs are going to be 71 to 106 inch-pounds. Don't do the foot-pounds. Eleanor's playing with some liquid dinosaurs. So we'll go ahead and get these guys on in here, torque it down, and then we are done with the lifters. Not editing that out. I'm just going to go straight for the 100 inch-pounds. Make sure it's not foot-pounds, because you're not going to like the outcome of that guy. Make sure she's sitting there holding all your dog bones down. It's got a little springy effect there.
Lifters, retainers, cam, that's all in. All right, finally. Head gaskets, heads, here we go. So, we got some Cometic MLS thick boys. These are 50 thousandths when clenched down. Very, very important thing to remember across all small block Fords. 302, 351, strokers, everything. If you look at the head gasket, this here is closed, and this fella back here is open. That open spot needs to be on the back of the engine. The coolant flows through the block, up, through the heads, and out your thermostat. If you have these ports open on the front, your coolant's just going to come in, go up into the heads, and out the thermostat. And the back half of your block, oh, you're just going to get a little crispy. So, even if it says front on the wrong side, just make sure you look into that, because you want this guy on the back. And one more thing, we're going to put a little RTV right in here, just to help this little tang seal against the block. You don't want oil and juices, and hopefully no metal shavings coming out the back there. We're going to dab on the RTV here. I like to use the 90-minute. Get it done right now, because my patience just doesn't exist. So if we can get it on there and sealed up, that makes me a happy fellow. Look at that. It already looks 10 times better. Head gasket, head studs. Let's go bring our head over here. Get her down on there. And we'll really, really get a good look at it. It's going to look really good. Oh. Remember, this isn't just your baby. This is next generation. She'll be building these motors, building these cars, and saving them from the junker too. Yeah, she'll beat up anybody who's going to junk a Fox. Time for these beautiful babies right here. Let's get these guys on here and just see how well they look. Well, huh? You guys started following this motor, she's just a block. We've done everything so far, all the way up to the top. And if I did miss something that you want covered more, let me know down in the comments. She'll make sure to remind me if I miss it. We got you covered, don't worry. Any questions you have that I can answer, I will try to answer to the best of my abilities, and she'll make sure to help out with that. So, if you see a comment from Jordan Dennis, my babe here, you'll see her muskrat back in the profile picture. So, we're going to go ahead and ARP lube up all the washers, get a little bit under the nuts, get them down on here. Then we'll start the torquelizations. Let's get to it. Now that we got all of our head stud nuts and washers, ARP lubed, and on here, I'm going to go ahead and just run them down, just touch the block. We're not going to crank on them yet, just run them down. And, some of them are down in there, so finger them, a little easier just to do that. So we'll time lapse this for you too. Alright, now we're down to torquing it. You want to make sure you do this pretty good, because there's a lot of clamping force being put on these heads. I've seen a couple different ways to do it. Some people say do it 100, 100, 100. Some people say do it 25, 50, 75, 100. We're going to do 55, 75, 110. Also remember, if you had just finished torquelizing down on these guys, you might want to go back to foot-pounds, 110 inch-pounds. Really won't do much for these. So here's a pattern in which you want to follow through your head bolts. We're going to go 1, 2. You can go either way from here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again for your last torque. That way everything is evenly clamped down across your head. Just a little bit in the opposite. Going to 55. Here we go to 55 on this side. Remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just like the main bolts. Here we go. Round 2. Fight. 75 foot-pounds. Oh, I will say, that is the one thing that I do not really enjoy about building engines is all the torquing. You know, torque it once isn't so bad, but 10 bolts, 3 times, 2 sides, whew, really gets to you. Alright, the last torque spec, reliable digital one, doesn't quite make it to 110. Going old school. Click, 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 click. Yep, you know it. 20 bucks, Hobo Freight, budget builds here. One more time at 110, here we go. Wow, there we have that. Cylinder heads are on. Call me biased, but I think she looks pretty good. Huh? A lot better than we started with a few days ago here. Let's go ahead and get push rods, rocker arms, and then we can go through the adjusting of our preload, at least how I do it. To each their own. There's multiple different ways, a bunch of different videos out there. This is just how we do it. Let's get to that. Getting the assembly lube back out. I'm gonna put a little dab down in each of the lifters, on the tips of each of the rocker arms. It's messy, so watch out. Well, we took our push rods and we, the air compressor through there, got them all nice and cleaned out. And when we took it apart, we found this tray here. I believe it's for a Chevy, actually. I don't know if they're specific, but the fellow we bought it off of had small block Chevys. He was up there at Summit Racing in one of the swap meets, and I saw this and I was like, I gotta have it. I needed something like this. Paid like $5-10 for it. In case he's watching us, thank you. So all these guys have a specific place to go in the head. At least I'm putting mine back in their specific place. We already did our piston to valve clearance. I wanted to show you a little more on push rod length checking, but if I'm going to be completely honest, I had a gentleman help me out with it, and he knows more about it and can probably explain more of the science to it than I can. If that's something you'd like to learn more about, maybe I can get a hold of him and be like, hey, next time you're setting some up, can I come over and bring the guys along and you see how it's done? I'm sure he's down for that. Another step closer. Now, I do want to mention, depending on what head you run, is going to determine whether you need these valve guides. Some heads you do, some heads you don't. In our case, they already came with them. They need them because they are non-pedestal rockers. They have no way to align themselves, so these guide plates will actually align the rocker arms. Hopefully, we're going to be all good to go with our previous adjustments. Nothing's changed besides coming off and going right back on. But there are some other styles. I can go grab one of our other cylinder heads and I'll show you. Be right back. This is my my wife's GT40 X03 heads. So they have this single style. They're not adjustable here. There's no break in the middle. You just plop these on and slide it back and forth until both of them are where you want them at. If you look down in the AFRs, they have a separate 2-piece in there. So we're going to wipe these off, and then we're going to put a dab of assembly lube on the top of the push rods before we set them down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that before I wipe them off. When you're wiping them down, go ahead and feel on your trunnions. Make sure your roller tip is good, no binding. That could be very expensive if you don't catch it. These are full of needle bearings, and one of these brakes, those are all going down the bottom of the oil pan. And, well, once they're down there, well, they're getting circulated to main bearings, rod bearings, cam bearings, back to your lifters, push rods, cam. well, they take the express route everywhere. That's not good. So take a few seconds, just feel along. Thing full rollers and non-pedestal mount. See how one side is flat, but if you roll it over, you got round. That flat side needs to be up, so your poly lock can lock down onto there. You don't want it the other way around it. You're gonna have some questions on what's that noise? Why is that not working right? What? There are our rocker arms. You can't tell me it doesn't look good because, wow, this thing's looking really good. So, let's go ahead and wipe off our poly locks. I like to unthread the poly lock center. I don't know what it's called. I like to unthread it a little bit just to make sure I can get all the way on there and it doesn't cause an issue thinking I'm tight, but I'm not really tight. And another thing is, I don't have a set out here. If you notice, these guys are long. Well, when I bought the girdles, they came with their own poly locks because the girdle is going to sit up here. So remember, if you're going to plan on running a girdle, you might want to hold off on putting the original poly locks in until you get your girdle. Save you a little time. I'm getting really excited. Having this thing break down really upset me, especially the time, I made a joke that I wanted it to break so I had something to work on over winter. Well, didn't mean this. Transmission, drive shaft, rear end, suspension, not this. Anything else? Anything else would have been fine. Not this. But hey, at least we're here now. We're going through it. You guys get to see it. Honestly, I think it worked out for the best. Stay together this time. I don't want to make another video about the same engine. Let's build another one. Or two. Or, it was even hinted towards, What about a big block? Stroke big block? I don't really see a lot of people using them. Should be some out there. Ideas? Put down in the comments, let me know. Is that something you want to see? Stick with small blocks? I love small block. I don't want to say they easily fit, because this thing is a tight fit in that car, but it does fit. So many things going on at the same time, it gets hectic, so just bear with me here. We're going to go ahead and set preload on our lifters with hydraulic lifters, not solid. You will have preload. Lash isn't really important. You're going to have zero lash on a hydraulic lifter, whether it's flat tappet or roller. Solid flat tappet or roller, you'll have lash, but we're not worried about lash, we're just worried about preload. I've seen a couple different ways to do it. This is by far the easiest. This is what's going to work for my dad, worked for my 306, worked for this in the car 4 different times when I kept doing it because here I didn't know that roller rockers they're noisy. They'll sit in there and yep, you'll hear them. If you don't hear it, probably not running. So I'm going to show you how we do it. So all we do is we're going to do it by 90-degree turns. So it's the easiest way to do it, where if you have to stop, you take care of youngin', do something to eat, gotta go start a side project, get distracted, call it a night. Easiest way to do it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to tighten these guys down until we touch. Okay? We're not putting any preload on them. Just until we touch. Also, we have the inner of the poly lock all the way out just to make sure we have all of the thread we need. That looked easy enough, right? That was step 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to go 90-degree increments. Okay? Once we make it a full round, that's 1. We're going to do it again, another round. And we're going to keep tightening them down every time we go 90 degrees. And that's going to let us know we're on the base circle of every lobe, at least at one point throughout the whole process. And that should give you a pretty good set of where everything needs to be in terms of preload, because as we explained, with the hydraulic lifters, those plungers will squeeze down. So if you just start cranking on these in the wrong position, you'll collapse that lifter, you'll just fire it up, and what the heck? It's like it's not breathing. You're not letting it open the valves. So we're going to go ahead and crank this 90 degrees, do that all over again, and again, and again, and again, 4 more times, and then we're going to do an initial 3/4 of a turn for preload, torque each one down to 20 foot-pounds. Here we go. See, now the reason I like this is, if I have to stop now and we go work on a side project, come back 5 days later, we know, hey, I don't have to worry about which one's already preloaded, or we're in exhaust, or intake, 5, 7, 9. If you got a number 9, you might want to be concerned. You just go around a few more times, make sure everything's good, torque them down. Only thing you don't want to do is when you get to the preload, you don't want to put preload on and then go back to that same one and put preload on it again. That will that'll cause some issues. Just a little bit here. See, we're not worrying about pumping up the lifters or anything. They soaked in oil. This way you're not worried that you gotta pump it up or anything. I mean, hello? It's still open down there, so we didn't pump any lifters up. Oil pan still has a little bit of debris in it from the bearing, but raining outside, so we can't really get that one cleaned out. I mean, in the high pressure hot tank, not our pressure washer in the driveway. One thing I don't want you to worry about is if you look down and you go, oh, that plunger's being pushed in. Well, look at the rocker arm. It's starting to open up that valve, so it's gonna have pressure on that plunger because there's a lot of spring pressure on here. I mean a lot. Using that spring compressor, cramping that down on there. Took a lot, but we got it. Now we're gonna go through and we're just gonna do a 3/4 turn, take our pile locks all the way back in, torque them down to 20 foot-pounds, and then we're ready for an intake, valve cover, timing cover, and oil pan. And then we're ready for the good stuff. This going back in there. Alright, so pick your position. You're just going to do 3/4 of a turn from wherever you start. You start here, you end here. And you start over here, end over here. Any way you want to do it. I think we're going to... The biggest thing though is once you're tight, you don't want to move the wrench. So we're going to come all the way around and we're going to hold it here. I'm going to run this pile lock in. Yeah, I know. You're like, well, why did you take it all the way out? Well, we did have some issues trying to guesstimate on how far out we were last time. And we had some loose rocker arms because that poly lock inner wasn't all the way out as far as we thought it was, and it was starting to cause a binding. We're like, hey, we're tight. We weren't tight. And we're going to take on our nice torque wrench. Boom. That one is done. I'll show you one more here and then we'll just skim through because tedious process. One thing you might want to think about, if you're going to come around to here, is this guy going to interfere here? Maybe you want to put a little bit off to the side here, so we'll start up here. Come around, that way my wrench isn't in the way of this guy. There we go. Now we have almost perfect preload on our lifters. We're going to go ahead and finish up the rest of these. You guys can stay back here and watch. Here we go. here are our stud girdles. Really expensive. Yep. Nope. Cheapest ones they were. Small block Ford. Keep an eye on that. Small block Chevy ones will have different valve positionings. Some heads have to have specific ones, like the twisted wedge. I believe because their valves are canted, you want to have the specific setup to match your valves. These are just the cheapest ones we could get. I think we got them from Jegs. Just as added protection. $100, make sure we're not going to snap a stud off from the rocker arms. I'd rather pay $100 for this guy than $600 for a new head. I will say we did use the cheapest ones possible. So the torque specs, whatever those were at the time, we weren't getting to it. So we just kind of go till it feels tight. I might put a drop of Loctite down on these threads while I have them in it, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. These really aren't something you want backing out while you're driving down the road. We'll go ahead and put the intake on. Let that RT and the V dry. It's only 90-minute stuff, but I mean, I've had some issues with the valve cover breathers. They weren't breathing very well. Blowing out this back seal, oil everywhere. So we're gonna go ahead and brake clean our surfaces here. Get it all nice and clean so that RTV has something to bite to. And we'll put that intake down on here. And then we'll call it a night for tonight. And we'll be back out tomorrow. Get this thing wrapped up, see how close we can get to putting it in the car. Thanks to, that rear China wall blowing out every single time, I went ahead and spent $20 on the cheapest intake studs I could find. I believe these are the 3-inch for the 351 Windsor. If you want to know, let me know, and I'll go ahead and look it up just to make sure. Yep, Speed Pros, cheapest ones I could get. They got some ARP lube on the bottom. Throw them down in there, and tight. I will say, it makes a major difference putting an intake on with studs. So if it's something you're going to be doing a lot, high performance race car build, maybe go grab on a set of these. What's your thoughts? Studs? No studs? Me personally, I like them. Let me know in the comments. This is a question I see a lot. Our intake is in here on our coolant port. Right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a razor knife and we're just going to cut it to fit. We're going to bring you on down here and show you where we're going to cut. Looks like we might need a little bit out of this corner up here, and this whole bottom down here needs cut. So let's jump over with a razor blade and get that taken care of. Come on. All right, so we're going to cut out this corner here, right across here, and a little notch out of this corner. Should be fine. Just do not cut this outermost piece here, and it won't seal as well. All right, so we got this guy all cut out. Nice big open port. Left the outer edge. We're going to do that to the other 3 pieces of the gasket, and then we'll get it on there. So we're not going to bother having you guys deal with watching the whole thing. All right, so we're going to use some RTV here. Couldn't figure out what kind to use. Well, it says it's the right stuff, so it's got to be, right? All right, we're going to put a little bit of RTV down here in this corner. Continue on from the RTV from the head gasket. And I'm going to put some RTV around our head gaskets here. And I have a few drops here just to help glue it down to where it needs to be while we put the intake on. Get this set up where we want it. Now we'll let that dry. We're going to go over an RTV the other side. And then we'll put you back up top and watch us bring the intake down. Also, these China walls back here, those gaskets that come in the kit, there's a little cork or rubber, just go ahead and throw those away. RTV, nice big old thick bead back here. Especially if you're going to use the $200 Amazon, eBay, cheapo performer intake. It's not perfect,
it does a fine job, but you know, budget build here. So I'm gonna go ahead and RTV these. We're gonna send you back up top.
Next part here might make a few you cringe. I'm gonna put a lot. It is Chinese intake. It is by far perfect on the centering and alignment here and there. I used to have some of the old RTV overlapping a little bit, but I am not taking this intake off for the 1754th time, so I'm gonna put a lot on here. So if you're one of those people who don't like a lot of RTV, just look away. Listen to the sounds of this calming rain. It's been going on for like 4 days now. Wow, I was at Summit the other day. Picked up this little handy lift block. Just wanted to see if it helped put the engine in and stuff, because I really didn't like the chains going across the front of the heads. It's like 15 bucks. Pretty good quality, it seems like. For the price, I'm not really going to argue. Here's our intake. As my wife says, they ought to put in there, this is a good mouse keeper outer. Not going to do full torque on these because, well, fragile aluminum. But there is an order to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's some Roman numerals on this intake. Wonder why. Well, there's that. We now have our intake on. The timing cover thrown on, oil pump pan thrown on, and then we're going to show you where we put some extra RTV just to make sure we don't have any leaks. Just like with your heads, you're going to have 2 of these little alignment dowels. I'm going to go up in the timing cover. If you didn't take them out before you took your engine to a machine shop to have them do cam bangs or clean something or whatever, they might have popped them out. They just go right here on the bottom of the block. I'll show you on the timing cover so you can kind of see what it is on the block. Now I'm going to put a little bead of RTV, just a little bit around the gasket, just to help it seal and hold in place. That way when we're moving stuff around. I especially like to make sure we get some around the coolant ports. So it's got to go through a gasket, through a timing cover, through another gasket, into the water pump. That's just a lot of spaces for there to be a leak, so I like to make sure there's definitely RTV around that. And the RTV kind of fills in any imperfections when you're casting. Just keep in mind, if you do put some RTV, you'll have to clean it all off next time you go to get back in here. These little provisions down here are stamped out. I'm assuming some of the early models probably didn't have those alignment dowels. So we're just going to pop those out so we have room for our dowels. My daughter has figured out my schedule and she knows that today Daddy goes back to work. So she'll probably be right up my butt most of the day. I'm not mad about that. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and put some timing cover bolts in. Some of these guys we're going to put some thread sealing on because they got kind of rusty in there last time. So you pull out some of your water pump bolts when you're tearing it down and you go, hey, this thing's covered in rust. Probably should put some thread sealing back on there. Had to bring it around the other way. Forgot about these top little guys up here. Pretty difficult to get in there. If you're running a reverse rotation water pump like most Fox bodies have, go ahead and just order up for whatever your Fox body you got. Wouldn't hurt to go ahead and take that back cover off and make sure it is actually a true reverse rotation water pump. I know myself and my father have had multiple issues just finding a reverse rotation water pump. Sometimes they say reverse rotation and they're standard. So when I was going to look for a standard rotation water pump, well, I could have just went and ordered a reverse, but we ended up going through and I was looking at some Crown Vics and F-150s with 351 Windsors, and we ended up finding the late model Crown Vics before they went to the mod motor. I can't remember exactly what year. If you want to know exactly what one I used, I can drop it down in the comments. Just let me know. Latest model with an aluminum standard rotation water pump is what we used. So I'm going to throw some RTV around these water ports, slap the gasket on, put it on here, torque it down so we can make sure that timing cover gets a good seal against the block. Here we go. Next piece we're going to put on here is our harmonic balancer. It's going to be torqued down to 70 to 80 foot-pounds. It's just a Summit brand one. We're just going to get it put on here. You're supposed to use a special installer that screws in the middle and pulls down, but yeah, we don't have that. So for now, we're just going to bring it in. We have oil on the back of it to help it slide into the seal. We're not going to torque it down because you really got to hold the back of the motor when you torque it. So we're going to wait till we put the flywheel on to torque it down. As far as the keyway for this 3.85 stroke crank, according to Summit, it's the same one as a small block Chevrolet. So I think I just went to the hardware store and got a generic keyway. Alright, water pump's on. Finally, oil pan time. And one more clearance to check before we slap everything together here. So one of probably the most important clearances, besides all your bearings, is your pickup tube depth. You don't want this guy, sitting against your oil pan, because then your pump's just going to suckleize on the bottom of the pan, not getting the oil in there. So another thing you don't want to have happen is have your pan's down here. That way when you suckleize on your oil to the top end of the engine, you have just air down here, waiting on the oil to return. You're not sucking it in. So your pickup depth clearance to your pan is very important. You want 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. You know me, I like that sweet spot, so I went with 3/8. I'm gonna go ahead and put something over here because we really don't want to smash the clay into our pickup screen. Bad day. Yeah, that guy says, yep, oops, that was a bad time. Let's not do that. Let's find something to cover that. Look at this. Ziploc baggie. Perfect. I'm gonna go with some clay. Now, saying this was the cheapest stuff I could find at Walmart. It's got to be played with a little bit. Maybe Play-Doh would be better. There we go. Now we're gonna put the gasket on. Set the oil pan down, push on it just a little bit, take it off, and we'll see what we got. There's our clearance. I'm pretty happy with that. Looks about perfect. Before I bolt down the oil pan, I'm gonna put a dab of RTV around each of the humps for the crankshaft, just to help that oil pan seal down there in the corners. We're going to bring the oil pan down one more time, put her on here, and we can start filling with oil. On the oil pan bolts, I used some Roll King, Tractor Supply, something. Cheapest ones I could find, grade 8. Don't use your cheap chrome ones. You have one of them break off from the block, and while you're taking things apart, welding nuts, and less than $5. Get you an assortment. There's 18 of these guys, so we're just gonna skip on through. And one thing I will point out that I dislike about this oil pan, can't complain too much. Got it in a trade. Where the drain plugs are in a horrible spot. They don't drain down out of the bottom, see, like your normal drain pans. They're on the side, and well, they just tack welded a nut on there. Well, the problem that we had happen is why we're doing this whole rebuild as aggressively as we were. Drain the oil, everything came out fine. No issues. Maybe just a little bit of powder on the magnetic tip. Nothing to like alarm at because it's fine. It's a little shaving. Well, no shavings, no chips, no chunks. Well, we had our rod failure. Drain the oil, still no shavings. Okay, can't be too bad. Pull the oil pan off. Oh! Yep, she held everything. If I had more time, we'd be cutting or welding a hole in a new nut in the bottom of this. That might be something to cover this winter. Maybe pull this back out and fix on that oil pan. But I'll post a picture right here of the nastiness. Yeah. Only issue I have with this pan. 1/4 inch bolts will be 7 to 9 foot-pounds. 5/16 will be 9 to 11 foot-pounds. Maybe we'll just go and do 9 all the way across the board. Seems pretty simple. I like to go and start in the middle and then kind of crisscross our way outward. Bring it down, kind of like the cylinder heads. But first, we're just going to bring them all down and snug them up. There we go. Next we're just going to throw our drain plugs in, put our cheapo dipstick in. I got something nifty to show you in case you do have a oil pan that comes with a dipstick and you do not use the block hole. Something I found out. Scared the crap out of my wife when I did it. Maybe this time we'll put the magnet on the back. Maybe we'll pick up some chips from back there this time. Let's hope there's not any. Anybody want chips? Chips in the motor? Chips in the motor? Oh, she doesn't. All right. What do you think of that? You guys saw when we started this again, just a bare block. I'm gonna bring you down and show you my little fun little thing I found out.
So when you're using a aftermarket oil pan, sometimes they have a dipstick hole here. Well, what do you do to plug the factory one? Well, turns out that hole is just a fuzz over 9 millimeters. So, you know, go out back and fire off a 9mm shell and tap her down in there with some RTV. It's holding. Scared the crap out of my wife when I did it. She didn't know what we were doing.
I don't have a part number for the dipstick. It is cheapest one I could find. It's actually really lucky and found one on the clearance racket, or Summit Racing, and it fit. I'm gonna go ahead and put some thread tape on our adapter before I put the dipstick in. Then I'll slap just a little bit more on our inner thread for the dipstick. I don't know what it's called. It's the inner one for the goes inside the adapter. We'll say one thing I did like about the universal fit dipstick is I just bend it around the exhaust, fit it where I need it, cut it to length, perfect. If you're low on oil, just snip it on it again and you're full. No, don't do that. Now we're ready for liquid dinosaurs. My wife's gonna come over here and pour it in. She wanted to pour it down the valley, but time constraints last night just weren't allowing us to do it. So we're gonna pour it down each side. Let it lubricate on the valve springs. Hopefully it doesn't pour out the bottom. Here we go. All right, so this is just gonna be just a first fire up and stuff. So we're just gonna run some cheap Road King oil and microguard filter. I'd get Wicks, but microguard and Wicks I believe are made by the same guys. So I mean, we only get a couple miles to an oil change when you're drag racing. Might get more now that we have good bearings. You know, we were having problems where we'd go make 1 or 2 passes and the oil pressure just, she gone, somewhere on the track. We were thinking maybe it's some of that race gas just getting down past the rings, getting down in the bottom of the pan, thinning up that oil. Here to find out, cylinder 6 checked out on a main bearing, or on a rod bearing, sorry. And that might be where some of the PSI went. Yep. Gone.
A little more.
We're going to pre-fill the filter just a little bit just to get it to soak it up. That way when we go to prime it doesn't take as long. She'll get the big liquid dinosaur box. Remember, save a little bit for the other side. I'm going to start dumping down on some of these valve springs here. Just like assembly lube. Keep an eye out for leaks. Let me know. Shout. Might be hard to hear. I gotta steal one more quart out of one of my bigger jugs. I might just pour it in. We'll let that drain down. Flip it over the other side. Do it on that side. Prime the oil pump, make sure it's coming out of all the rocker arms. And then we'll go ahead and put our valve covers on. You can really look at how good this thing looks. And by the way, in terms of making sure I had it in the right direction, remember, if you don't have an oil sensor in here right now, what I do is I put an oil galley plug in the Fox body extender tube and thread that guy on in here. Because if you don't, well, you're going to test just how far your oil pressure goes. I can say about 7 feet. Whoops. Camera wasn't on for that. Whoops. Good news is I tested on the oil pump. See, my oil PSI gauge is just one of the mechanical ones, so I can't leave that sensor just in there. Because it's not actually a sensor, it's just a hookup for a hose, and well, it'll also shoot oil across the room. So, now that that's done, we clearly have oil in our pump. We're going to go ahead and have the drill in reverse and run it through with a 5/16 socket on the bottom of it. It's going to sit in that hole where the distributor rides, so it's not going to wobble out. And we have a wobbly socket in case we move around. See, everything will be fine. And we're going to look for oil coming out of our rocker arms and hopefully not shoot it across the barn again. Really need to seal this floor. Well, we were going to have complete transparency here on this channel. we did a whoopsie during the priming stage, so we kind of shut that down. Like, starting to pump oil, we heard a bink, and then it just started aerosolizing the oil. What the heck? Well, so that guy there is supposed to go in there. Did a little bit of research. Apparently, you put that in, and then you hammer or chisel on the side, and it knocks a little bit of that cast iron in the way, prevents that guy from popping out. You know, this is a learning curve for all of us. In case you take these guys out, that's something you might want to look into. So we're going to go ahead and address this issue, get this guy put back in, take a chisel to it, put the intake back on, put more oil back into it.
I wasted like 5 quarts.
Sorry, dinosaurs. You don't get to play in the big motor. We're going to put some more RTV on there and start over again. So, here we go. I don't know if you guys can see that down in there, but I took a punch made out of a grade 8 bolt. Dink, 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 dink. That'll create a small lip in there to keep that plug from popping out again. Now, after our snafu with the oil gully plug there, we got it all taken care of, beat in, little notches put in case it tries to pop back out. We're going to go ahead and try to prime the system again. We have a 1/4 inch adapter in our drill, drill's in drill mode, 1/4 inch extension, and a 5/16 socket down there on the oil driver. If you guys watch down on the top of these, you're going to have to tilt it back a little. You'll see oil starting to spew out. All of them. All right, there we go. All of our lifters and rocker arms have oil coming out of them now. Little information in case you don't know. The way this system works is there's 2 oil gully plugs on the side of the block. The oil will come up, hit here, come down to each side, and hit this whole rail here that's drilled out. Oil will come around to your lifters. Some will go into this one, some will go into this one as it keeps on going down. It will go up the push rod,
into the rocker arm, and it'll squirt across the rocker arm to the other side to oil your spring in your tip. That's just a little fun fact there in case you didn't know that. So when this oil gully plug popped out on us, we were pumping oil up. We just had a fountain here under the intake. And it was just pumping all of it up so fast because there was no pressure being built, just volume, that we were getting gurgles and bubbles. And so that was a mistake. Seems to be taken care of now. Look forward to more videos. We will post as fast as we can. You know, the budget's not huge, but we'll keep up with as much as we can, as fast as we can, to keep bringing you guys stuff. Thank you very much for tuning in with us. You have a nice night.